Hey there gardeners, Chris here from Garden Steading, and as you can see I've got my dragon fruit. These have been in for a while. I've got the one that I commercially bought basically from a nursery that's going really well. It's growing quite well. I haven't actually done any cutting with any of these. I have simply planted them. I've got a bit of a trellis set up here, which I've got a previous video on. I've got some garden beds in just to give these some good quality soil to get started in, and I've just let them go. Now, on the bright side, this one is growing really well. I've got some cascade over the top, which from what I understand is a good thing. However, over here behind me, I've got some very poor results. Now, these ones were actually free, and the problem is I haven't trained them. I haven't basically trimmed them back to divert all the energy the way I want it to go, which is to grow upwards, and as a result, we don't have the results that we want. So, I'm gonna start with this one first. I've gone online, I've done my research, figured out what I need to do to bring these more into where they need to be so that I can get them fruiting and flowering as quickly as possible. And I'm gonna take you through basically me following that advice, what the advice was, how I'm implementing it, and hopefully we'll end up with a much better and much cleaner dragon fruit trellis system here in no time at all. And the big benefit, I'm gonna say, straight off the bat is even though I'm gonna be cutting off quite a lot of these branches, the extra branches, those can then be grown and you can get extra dragon fruit out of them, whether you're going to be planting them yourself, giving them away, selling them, anything like that. You know, it's pretty cool. So let's get into it because this is going to be a fairly decent job. Now, the source I've used basically to get a little bit of information on how to trim these was the Grafting Dragon Fruit YouTube channel. The guy there was very informative with his video on basically trimming new dragon fruits or newly planted dragon fruits, because I was struggling a little bit to find someone who actually had relevant information specifically for me. So one of the things we need to keep in mind is that basically the energy is traveling from the roots up the plant, which means that the stuff down the bottom is obviously stealing your potential from the top of your dragon fruit. And that is very noticeable here because I've got these massive growths that I should have cut off way long ago. And unfortunately, they're actually rotting because we've had a lot of rain. So I'm gonna trim these off. Kind of one of the interesting points that was made was if you're trimming them on these little hard stems, you can plant them straight away. That's not gonna be a drama. If you are chopping them through the soft flesh, in that situation, you will need to let them dry out, then plant them to get your roots growing. These are rotted because they've been on the ground, and I'm not really sure. I might give them a try growing them, but obviously that is not really what you want. You want them to be these nice long pieces that you're gonna grow, but you don't want them to be rotting away. You especially don't want your snails or slugs to have eaten the top of the plant, which has happened somewhat here. That one looks okay, but that's something to keep in mind. So obviously here we've got another huge one of these, which we can trim off. I probably should put my gloves on because these do have little spines on them. And while they're not the most deadly, they could do a bit of damage. With this one here, one thing that I do need to point out is, unlike in the more traditional trellis setups that so many of the dragon fruit gardeners are using, I am not putting in one of those traditional trellises where I've got one dragon fruit on each side of the trellis. I've got one plant here which actually has two main leaders up instead of the single leader, which is the traditional kind of way of doing it. I'm gonna keep that, I'm gonna see how I go, but I'm gonna trim it back to those two, and then I'm gonna try and get those cascading over away from the caravan behind it, and I'm just gonna try and use this space as efficiently as I can. Most of the dragon fruit setups I've seen have actually been kind of a 360-degree trellis, but that's not what I've really got space for here. But this is a very sunny and hot spot in the garden, which is ideal for the dragon fruits as long as I can keep them basically watered. Okay, so we're moving up the plant now. Again, we're gonna be taking off some more of these branches, like this one here, another really nice branch that looks like it could have had a lot of potential. When we get right up the top here, there is a couple of branches over the back which do need a bit of attention. I think there's just one here that probably just needs chopping off. We'll take that off first. So very much just like quite a damaged little nub there. Not a great one. What you do need to be careful for, I would say, if you're in a situation like mine, is I've actually got a branch coming across from the dragon fruit next to it, which I don't want to trim off because I think that might even be potentially the leader. But when we look up the top here, I've got 1, 2, 3 of these heading up here. And as you can probably imagine, those are all starting to cascade over. What I have basically seen from the advice is what you kind of want to do is once they're coming over, you actually trim them so that you've only got a couple of inches across the top of your trellis. I'm a little bit nervous about doing that. The reason you do that is because you want to get these little growths off the top, and then you get those cascading down. And again, as someone who's never done this before, obviously you can be a little bit worried about doing something as hectic as just chopping the top off your dragon fruit plant when you're obviously hoping that you're doing the right thing. Now, this is following the professional advice, and I might just give it a go here. I'm like I said, I'm a little bit reticent about doing it because even though that is the professional advice being given, this is my very first dragon fruit. It is going quite well, in my opinion. The experts might say otherwise, and I don't really want to impact it negatively. So what we will do is we'll move on to the smaller plants, which have much, much bigger problems because they've grown really erratically and not very effectively at all because I haven't been trimming them. Okay, so this one here, as you can hopefully see, I've got one that I've identified as a leader, as the leader on this plant that I want to grow up, but I've actually planted 2 quite close together, kind of on either side of this pole. And as a result, it's a little bit of a mess down here. But what we will focus on is we'll follow this one. This is the leader, which is clearly identified as the one going the right direction, going up towards the top of our trellis. And what we're going to do is we're going to chop off these little branches down the bottom here that are going entirely the wrong direction. Because this is all energy that could be sending the plant upwards that is basically being stolen by those lower branches. And as you can probably see, this upper branch here is nowhere near as healthy as this lower branch here was. So this has really strong growth. It's looking really green, whereas this one is looking a little bit sad in comparison. I might need to put a bit of fertilizer in, but I think at the end of the day, the problem is that as we see on the second one I've got growing here, all the energy is being pushed into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different little branches, and we need one. We need one that's heading straight up, heading for the sunlight, heading for the heavens, that we're going to get our fruit off. So what I will do on this one, as a non-expert, is I'm going to trim these all off. And the reason I'm picking these ones off to trim is because I want something that's growing upwards. And so I'm going to trim the ones that aren't kind of working towards that first, and then we'll pick our main one that's going to grow, which I'm thinking will be this one here. It could also be potentially that one, but it's already kind of falling the wrong way, so we're going to take that off. And I guess we could do this one here. So maybe that would be the smartest choice. And so on that grafting dragon fruit channel, he did say in some circumstances he actually leaves a couple of leaders in case the snails and the slugs get into your fruit, into your dragon fruit, and take the tops off, because once they do that, they're going to stunt the growth, and obviously you're pretty stuffed. So as you can see here, we're now back to 1 central leader on the one on the left here. We've got 2 on this one here. We really need this to grow up to kind of more effectively get it heading up, but I feel like that is a really good step in the right direction. I'm going to move these out of the way because the problem is if I kind of sit across there, I'm going to end up with dragon fruit spikes in my behind, which is not ideal at all. Whether these really small ones are going to grow, I have no idea. But we're going to move across to our next plant. This one is looking a little bit better in that while we still have an insane amount of growth that we really probably don't want at all, We've got quite a few spiders on this plant, which obviously will hopefully help keep the slugs away. I don't know that it actually works that way, but we can hope. So we'll trim these bottom ones off. We've got quite a nice one there that's looking pretty good. So I'm taking off the easy choices first, the ones that I know aren't really going the way I want. This one I feel like I could probably train up. This one over the back here could potentially be trained up as well. We've got one all the way over here, which might be a good leader. We can take out this one here. Off it went. We'll take off this bottom one because again, it's not going the right way and it has been attacked a little bit by, I would say, a snail or a slug. The big question is, do we want to take off this whole thing here, which is, you know, quite a big question. I'm going to leave this one here. Gosh, choices. It does take a little bit of thought. Obviously, as the first time doing this, I've really got no idea what I'm doing. So we're just hoping that I'm heading in the right direction. So what I might do, I'm going to hedge my bets. Rather than doing the very purist approach of having the one leader, I'm going to take the coward's approach and I'm going to go for 3 instead. So taking this one off. I'm going to maintain this one here, which has got that one leader coming up off it. I'm going to take off this one at the back here, which is just fallen over the back there, because this one here I can train up, and I'm going to need to go get some more of my Hessian rope or strapping. I've got one here, and this one over here. So 3, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this one off. Don't know if it was a smart idea, but now we've got 2. We've got one here and we've got one over here, which is kind of heading over to the other post, but we can work with that. And now we've got the one more plant to do. Okay, so we're going to look at this one here. Again, I feel like this is a little bit of an easy one. We're going to knock off that bottom branch. We're going to knock off this other bottom branch again. We've got a nice one heading up there, and then we've actually got one heading over towards the next trellis across, which I'm going to hold on to. We're going to keep that one there because at the end of the day, it's kind of going in the right direction. Question is, I'm going to chop that one off because I just feel like it's going to be the harder of the ones to train up. So there we go. We've now got them all trimmed, basically. Am I going to trim the tops off my main dragon fruit? I'm not really sure about that one. Why don't we give it a try on one of the branches? Okay, so I'm hoping you can see me up here. And so basically what I've got here is I've got this big branch, which is growing quite aggressively. I'm really hoping the little knob on the end is not a flower. I'm assuming it's not. And so this one, I bent it over the top of my trellis, and basically what happened is it partially snapped. But I think if I understood the advice I watched on the Grafting Dragon Fruits channel, when you trim them at the top, you should get some nice bits of growth, which is, I think, what I've actually got up the top here. I might be totally wrong, which would be quite sad, but we'll see how we go on that one. And so I'm going to take this one off, which could be the silliest thing I've ever done, but that's what we're going to do for the moment. And the reason I'm doing that is because up the top here, we've got 4 of these little nubs that are growing off, which I believe is exactly what you want. I think that is the big end game plan. And yeah, so we've done that. We've got this one that's grown across the top as well. Should we chop that one too? The problem with this one is that it is actually crossing another branch, and that branch there, which you can see is tied down here, it's actually getting a little bit of rot from being on the top of the trellis there because we've had so much rain. So it is a little bit of a concern, but as I said, we might leave it for now. We'll see how we go. We've trimmed the top off one of them, so hopefully that is a good success story. And yeah, we should hopefully have a couple more that are getting up into that taller stage quite soon. Okay, so what do I have here in my hand? One IKEA hammer. You can most certainly get a big boy's hammer as well, or a big girl's hammer. I've got some staples, which I had these for a piece of fencing, and then I've got my Hessian strap that I bought specifically for this project. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna basically run this around my trellis and just hold my dragon fruit in place. It's pretty simple. I reckon the trick, and this is what I've done so far, don't put these in, don't put the nails in too hard, because then what you can do is you can come along with a screwdriver, pull them out quite easily, and kind of rearrange how your dragon fruit is growing up the trellis. It should work pretty well. I'll just put my nail down there. I've got one piece that's an escapee from over the other side. That's not exactly what we want, really. So if I can get this guy a bit over here. I'll just get that nail in. And again, it's not about getting that nail in super far. It's simply about just getting that nice and secure, just to give this a bit of good guidance, which is all it really needs. There we go, we're all sorted. So that should basically get these sorted for a short amount of time, a couple of months maybe. I'll have to make sure that I cut off any extra little sprouts that appear that aren't following the way we want it to go. And hopefully, yeah, I'm on my way to dragon fruit.